Good evening and welcome to a brand new season of In Demand. I'm Trudy Kerr.
And I'm Jane Dennis, and tonight we are looking at women as academics.
Absolutely, and with girls faring so much better than boys in school and universities, and with more and more emphasis on success in education, tonight we are joined by two of Malta's leading academics.
That's right, this evening's guests are Dr. Leonie Baldacinno, who works in the field of entrepreneurship, creativity and innovation, and Professor Janet Mifsud, who works in the Department of Clinical Pharmacology and Therapeutics.
Well done, absolutely. And first up, we're going to talk to Leonie.
Hello, how are you? Nice to see you, Leonie. Welcome to In Demand. Thank you for joining us. Now, I've got a really stupid question to start off with, which is, well, I generally have quite stupid questions anyway.
No question is stupid.
But this one is, can you tell me what is an academic?
Right, so an academic is a person who works in academia, meaning working in the context of a university. Now, most people associate people who work in universities with being a lecturer. Therefore, our main role would be delivering lectures. One of our roles is delivering lectures, so teaching is one of our main tasks, so to speak. However, it is actually a very small chunk of what we actually do. Theoretically, our work is split across three main areas. The first being teaching, lecturing, the second being research, and the third being administration. So that is how it is supposed to be split up. In reality, it is not that clear-cut because we have a lot more that we need to cover. We are always involved in EU projects, for example. We have to attend conferences and seminars overseas. We organize conferences and seminars here in Malta as well. We do a lot of work, outreach with the community, so we teach not only within the university, but we also do lots of work with other entities, other organizations, and so on.
Wow.
So it's actually quite busy, quite exciting, and never a dull moment, as they say.
Because I have to say, if you say academic to me, my first instance thought is, okay, lecturing or research.
Yes.
Sitting in a lab and looking at something under the microscope, and that's all you do. But what you do is, and we were talking to you before the show, and you as academics travel an awful lot as well.
We do.
And that's to go and support your field in other areas.
Well, it actually links into the teaching and the research, because we sometimes teach in other institutions overseas. We get invited to universities overseas to teach. So I've been to the UK, I've been to a number of other different places teaching. But we also go to disseminate our research overseas. So we need to publish what we write, because that is a very important part of academia. It is actually the only thing that matters in academia if you want to get promoted up the ranks.
Okay.
It is actually the key currency in academia. So we have to write and we have to publish. But we also present our findings, our research at conferences overseas. So as we were saying before the show, we travel quite a lot to attend conferences and disseminate our research in different countries.
And your area of academia is?
Creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship.
And what is that for anybody that's watching and thinking, I don't know what that means? Because I'm thinking, I don't know what that means. What does that mean, to break it down?
Right, okay. So creativity refers to the generation of ideas that are new and useful. Okay, so we have a number of different tools and techniques available that enable people to be creative at will. So many people think that you're either born creative or you're not. But there is only a small element of truth in that, because I do believe that certain people are born more naturally talented at being creative, okay, so that you can see in the eminent creatives that you can think of. However, every individual has the potential to be creative.
Wow.
Yeah? And we teach different tools and techniques that enable people to practice their creativity and become more creative individuals.
Do you work with businesses when you do that? Because that sounds like something that sits more naturally in a business environment.
And this is why I said that my areas are creativity, innovation and entrepreneurship, because they are very closely linked. The second topic, innovation, refers to the implementation of those ideas in a context that gives you some value. Because creative ideas in their own are very important, but unless they are actually implemented, put into place, you can't get any value out of them. Therefore, we study ways of managing and evaluating ideas and putting them into place, implementing them in different contexts. So business is one area where they are put into place, but not just private businesses, but public organisations.
So that means
and so
is
on.
that not another string to your bow then, another layer of the work that you do then, going out to businesses to support that?
Yes.
And is there a greater need for that in Malta than other countries? Is innovation and creativity a relatively new concept here?
Not a relatively new concept. Actually, the Maltese have been very creative, very innovative for, as you know, for history. We operate on a rock with practically no natural resources.
This is true, isn't
So-
it? This is true.
We have to be creative and innovative, you see. So although perhaps the terminology is relatively
I think
recent,
that's right, yes.
the vocabulary has, you know, it has only started to come into our vocabulary over the past few years. But the act of being creative and innovative has been a part of being Maltese for many, many years. It is the only way we have survived and we have flourished and prospered, and you know, this is what we do.
So your nationality makes you an expert in it already before you even needed to study it.
Well, perhaps, but there was a lot of learning as well after
Well, see,
that.
now we've met this evening and we're talking about academia as well, and just again, before we got onto the show, we were also talking about all sorts of things, particularly motorbikes. And you're kind of not, if you don't mind me saying, not the sort of person that I would naturally say, oh, that's an academic. At what point did you decide academia is a career for me, I'm going to make this into what I want to do?
Okay, that's a very good question, and I don't really have a very specific answer. So I'll tell you a bit about myself and how I ended up doing what I do now, right? So I did an undergraduate degree in psychology way back in 2000, so my background is in psychology. And I chose psychology not because I wanted to become a psychologist. I could never imagine myself working as a psychologist, but because I really, really like the subject.
Right.
So I went into this, you know, with my heart, and I started studying, and I found it to be really fascinating. After I finished my psychology, I went into a master's in creativity and innovation at the Edward de Bono Institute, which is my home now. So this has been my academic home since way back in 2004. And when I was doing my master's in creativity and innovation, at the same time I used to work for our family-owned business, which gave me an interest in entrepreneurship.
Right.
So I started doing my research on creativity innovation in enterprise, in startups and so on. And at that point I used to think to myself, okay, how did I end up doing this from psychology to, you know, business? At the time it didn't really make any sense. However, later on, I started to discover the psychology of entrepreneurship and the psychology of creativity, and things started to fall into place, including getting a job at the university while I was still doing my master's as a research officer on a part-time basis. From that, I moved on to being an assistant lecturer and starting my PhD. And that leads me to where I am now. I'm now a lecturer in entrepreneurship, creativity and innovation, and I'm the director of the Edward de Bono Institute.
So it was organic, it wasn't something you thought, you know, I aspire to be an academic?
No, but there were certain moments that I remember very, very clearly that I thought, this is absolutely brilliant, I love this, you know, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Like, I never imagined myself to be a teacher or to teach, to lecture, but the first time I did it, within the first 5 minutes, I was thinking, like, this is brilliant, this is such good fun. I mean, it could be because I can stand up there and talk uninterrupted and not get told off like I used to get told off in class.
We don't like that at all,
No, not at all. Totally shy.
No, I actually try to avoid that. I try in my lectures, I avoid going on and on and on for hours on end. All of us at the Institute, we don't only teach about creativity, but we also teach in a creative way. So we do a little bit of lecturing, but a lot of hands-on workshops. Because the only way you can learn the tools is if you can, you sit down and you apply them in group settings and so on and so forth.
It's interesting because Trudy was talking about the fact that you ride a motorbike, you're an attractive young woman, you ride motorbikes.
We'll be talking more about motorbikes later on, don't worry.
So Edward de Bono, he's a philosopher. So, ish.
His background was in medicine, and then he started to develop the thinking tools and went on to the creative.
The reason I'm saying it is my professor of philosophy looked like a stereotypical. He had grey hair, grey glasses on the end of his nose, grey hair. He had a velvet jacket that he used to wear all the time. So there's this stereotypical image, I think, that people have of academics, and yet you've deconstructed that. I think that stereotype, not single-handedly, but
and not deliberately.
No,
either.
absolutely. But how do people feel when they find out? Is there a surprise element when they find out what you do for a living?
It depends whether they knew me
Yes.
before
Right.
or not. Because I mean, when I present at conferences, you know, I to try to look a little bit more conventional.
You
not
don't rock up on
100%,
the BMW bike then?
Well, I do here in Malta, but if I'm overseas, I can't. But I do sometimes go to conferences wearing leather pants and a suit jacket. So I think it's about blending who I am, being comfortable with who I am and staying true to my identity, but also acknowledging that you can't be completely over the top because that could diminish your credibility in the eyes of people who don't know you.
But in a social environment, so you're somewhere where you're anonymous and you are the way you are, you turn up on your motorbike and you're in clothes that you're comfortable with and you start talking to somebody and you tell them what you do. Is there a surprise? I'm thinking because, as again, I think in society we have a view about what people in academia are like, and you might be a very different view. And being a woman in that field as well, does it often surprise people?
I think it interests them. When I say what I do, it is normally met more with a genuine interest in, you know, tell us more. What is creativity all about? What is innovation all about? What is, you know, and then I start to talk about foresight, which is another element of, another area of research that the Institute does. So it's more of, you know, oh wow, all of this, rather than...
I'm fascinated, and I really do want to come back and talk more about this and about motorbikes. And time is flying because we are, yes, I know, I know. We are going to go for a very quick break and we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about this in a second. So whatever you do, don't go anywhere. Go and make yourself a cup of coffee, go and make yourself a cup of tea, or get yourself a glass of wine and come back and join us for another part of InDemand in just a few minutes. See you in a second.
Welcome back to InDemand, where we have been joined by Professor Janet Mifsud from the Department of Clinical Pharmacology and Therapeutics. I had to say it again because I've been practicing that in the bathroom.
Very well.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you
And
for
I'm
having
not
me.
going to say it because she's already said it. And Janet, we know each other and it's very, very lovely to have you on the show.
Thank you for
How are
having
you
me.
today?
Very well, very
Good,
well.
good,
Thank
good.
you.
Listen, because of this phrase, pharmaceutical, that Jane has now successfully said twice,
Sure.
Explain to us, what is that? What do you do?
Yes, in fact, many people think, oh, you're the Department of Pharmacy. Actually, we're not. We teach more than pharmacy students. I teach practically all healthcare professionals, that is medics, doctors, nurses, radiographers. I even teach lawyers, psychologists as well. And it's basically anyone who some way or another is going to touch medicines and how they work. And this is what we do in our department. So pharmacology means, it comes from Greek, actually. Many words in medicine come from Greek. So pharma, for your information, actually means poison, because the Greeks actually recognize that. Medicines, all medicines have side effects. So
Wow,
clinical pharmacology means the study of medicines in humans, and therapeutics now is how we use these to cure disease. And it's
if
something...
I'd known that before, it would have come out a lot easier because I'd have been able to deconstruct the sentence.
Exactly. So it's actually what I do in my first lecture, actually, with the students, even medical students, because, you know, it's all pharma this and pharma that, and they have to understand that. So we actually see how medicines work, what they're actually doing in your body. And we all look at different areas.
And and as Leonie was saying, that obviously what she does has all these different aspects.
That's right.
Is that the same for you?
Yes, definitely. I mean, it's like people say, oh, it's just lecturing. It's definitely not. It's like lecturing, it's important because at the end of the day, a university, any higher education institution is there to promote knowledge and to increase knowledge. And we have to do that through our students. But we need to motivate them. It's not just imparting knowledge. So many universities overseas now are doing what's called problem-based learning, especially in medicine, you know, giving the students problems and they have to look it up. And then they come back and they learn from each other. And a lot of case-based learning as well. So we do that all the time.
So you're thinking about the learning practice as well as the well as the topic.
That's right. But then it's all about how are you going to increase this knowledge? What research are you going to do? You have to learn by doing. So we have this idea, but why does this medicine do this? But how can I be sure that I reduce side effects in this little boy? How can I, design a new medicine for this medicine to work better? It's all about now what we call personalized medicine, more directed medicine. Trying to reduce the side effects, but at the same time having an effect. And really saying, what is the best for me? It's verging on genetics, a bit what I like to call science fiction too.
Yes, that sounds
so
very
it's really
scary, actually.
yeah, no, it's not. It's actually really trying to understand what's happening on a cellular level, molecular level, and trying to see, what is happening. I mean, why do I take some medicines, once a day? Why 4 times a day?
Yes.
But why can't I drink with this medicine?
Yes.
Why does this medicine make me sleep, for example? Why do I come out in a rash, for example, if I take certain types of medicines? So
and we've been trying to get you on the show for a really long time, and I know that you also have an awful lot of travelling,
That's right.
like Leonie,
That's
involved
right.
in your job. And is it
That's
the same
right.
thing that Leonie
Yes,
was
because once you get involved in research, besides the EU projects, which Leonie mentioned, I'm also happen to be right now, because my research is on medicines used in epilepsy. So I happen to be Vice President Europe for the International Bureau for Epilepsy. So I have to travel a lot for a lot of business meetings. We're really trying on a world level to make epilepsy more known. We've just passed a WHO declaration actually, earlier this year. We're doing a lot of lobbying on the national level. We organize a lot of national conferences to sensitize. I really feel that many people feel that the university is there, the ivory tower up there, but it's not.
Yes.
It's a lot of outreach work, a lot. We wear many different hats. We're involved in Science in the City. I'm involved on the Malta Council for Science and Technology. I'm also involved on the President's Foundation for Social Wellbeing.
And one of the things that you're involved in, and I'm going to quote this because I don't want to get this wrong, is that you were appointed the Commissioner on the National Commission for the Promotion of Equality for Men and Women, and you've represented Malta at several gender EU, UN and Euromed meetings. And at the top of the show we were talking about
I was the first Gender Equality Commissioner between 2004 to 2010.
And we were talking at the top of the show how well women are doing and girls are doing in academia in Malta. And I think statistically they're doing better outside of PhDs, where I think more men are doing PhDs, but in tertiary education and university, girls are doing outperforming men.
That's right.
Now, so what work do you do, given that this is happening anyway? Because I would normally think gender equality was about addressing the imbalance for women and men. What kind of work do you do in the gender equality field?
Well, I'm still at the university. We actually have a gender issues committee, so we do that a lot. And I'm very much interested in I'm also actually acting, even though I'm no longer a commissioner, but I'm very much involved with the commission. I try to help them. So right now, for example, I'm a mentor for this mentorship scheme as well. It's a new project. I'm mentoring a young nurse. So she follows me and I follow her, and she does what I do, and how you take decisions. But many people say, but how do you organize your time? How do you organize your family, your travel? We all have families here, our parents, trying to make sure that everything works, ordering Monday things like shopping and getting the housework done and making sure, everything is up and running. And I think it's, those types of decisions which you take on a daily basis are the ones which are going, even a small decision. Do I decide today to get up early or get up late? Am I going to get stuck in traffic? Am I going to arrive for the lecture or harass because I'm late? Or do I make it a point, for example, if I'm traveling, I make it a point always of packing not on the day before, but at least 3 days before. I have actually my uniform for traveling. I always wear the same things. That's another trick. And always to color combine clothes, for example. You learn these things along the way.
This is super organised. I mean, I don't. I pack.
I was thinking if it was all to be about academic studying and behaviours and research.
It's about making sure you're colour coordinated and got the right
organised,
suitcase. I'm not like that. And just to touch on that, you touched very quickly on this mentoring a young nurse, and I'm going to zoom back into that because just to come back to the gender issue, does that mean that you're mentoring her because she's a young lady who's studying? And if that is, what does that involve that might be a little bit different?
Actually, as mentors, we're both males and females, so it's not just the mentees are generally all females, yes, but it's more how does she make like if she has problems in her workplace. Very often I always say that problems in the workplace are usually due to 90% lack of communication or miscommunication.
Okay.
So teaching her, look, if you want to tell like she's working in a ward and there's a new medicine for this child, and make sure it's given properly, to make sure that the messages are passed on well, especially at the end of shifts. And if there are people problems, somebody doesn't like this, or there's some new directive or whatever, how does she manage? It's all handling
So
people.
they're quite specific to one individual, but the gender issues that you're managing on a wider basis,
Yes,
are there
I
things...
think it's, we women tend to be our own worst enemies, I find. We tend not to promote ourselves very often. We tend to keep back.
It's been a running thing.
And especially, well, I'm talking about perhaps my experience in Malta. But we do, and I do find, I find a lot of, since I've been at university now, you know, over 25 years, and I see many of my younger students who are now doing PhDs and have really good jobs, you know. I have former students who are working in Germany, in the US and the UK, and they come to tell me, no, I did it because you did it. And it's really good.
Wow, wait, they did it
Yes,
because you did
it's
it. That's
such a big
amazing.
satisfaction.
That's great, but statistically, men are still outstripping women in terms of being heads of faculties and academic senior leadership positions.
Not really.
Across the world, there's 22% versus in terms of women in leadership positions.
But I should say that in Malta, in the last few years, we're doing, as Gender Issues Committee, we keep quite a bit of data. We do have we're not still 50-50 with respect to full professors, male, female. But I think we're doing quite well. We have more deans now who are females. A new one was just appointed recently. We do have more students, I would say, even if you go to architecture, for example, which is practically 40-60 now. ICT as well. Engineering is still the one which is a bit least, but we're seeing more and more. Medicine as well. Medicine, females definitely outnumber the males. And,
but how does that translate post-academia? So when everybody's been to university and they finish their tertiary education, women are still not the economic contributors to Malta that men are, and don't hold the same level of senior leadership positions.
I think it will be changing. I think I always say, when I was at the Gender Issues Commission as well, it takes a generation. I think we have to educate our young people and their models. Our mothers, very few of them worked. I think when I was at school, perhaps one girl whose mother worked, which was really seen as out of this world. Nowadays, you know, my daughter should say, when she was young, she was telling me, oh, I always wished to be a mommy girl at school, that you pick me up, you know, not go with the van. Now it's changed. You know, she's working as well, and it's changing a lot. And you see this, you know, we don't only have, like in Italy, they have what they call the mammone, you know, the young men remain at home and their mother does everything. It used to be the same for young girls too, and the mothers go to the bed, do their lunch, everything. Yeah. But now it's changing a lot, and I think they're becoming more independent. It doesn't help very much that young people in Malta still live at home very often until they decide to live with their boyfriend or get married. So they're used to getting pampered. But it's changing. It's changing rapidly. There's this big culture change, I think, definitely.
You said something before we go to a break, and I'm just going to, I don't know, you must have picked it up as well. Janet, you said how women don't promote themselves, and we've found this, haven't we? Throughout everything
it's been interesting when we've asked people about what they've done, particularly themselves, and then the women have sort of said skirt over their own contribution and talk about it on a wider scale and use the terminology we, and we've had that conversation quite a lot.
And I'm sure we're going to get back to that and touch on that again in a few minutes, because we've got to go to a break. I'm having such a great time with you ladies today. But we're going to take a quick break. Whatever you do, don't go anywhere, because we are going to come and talk about that and other things in just a second. So again, make yourself a cup of tea or whatever you're going to do, and come back and join us in just a few minutes.
Welcome back to In Demand, where we have Dr. Leonie and Professor Janet joining us, talking about women in the field of academia. Ladies, we were talking earlier, Janet, a little bit about not the topic itself, but the vehicle of learning and how we learn. Do you think women bring a different style or technique to the way we go about teaching people?
I think as females, I think because of everything we have to do, we learn how to multitask. I find very often that I get good ideas. Like I always tell my students, especially if they're working on a particular something in the lab and nothing's working, and you know they've tried everything, and they tell me, look, sleep on it, don't give up. And in the morning, you know, your bright idea comes about. Actually, this is the way that the structure of the benzene ring was discovered. You know, he dreamt about a cat biting his own tail. And
say that again.
the benzene ring, which is a ring. It was
Yes,
discovered
yes.
because the guy who found the structure dreamt about a cat biting his own tail. So I really believe that it's interesting, Leonie
Is this
said she's
because
a
you're
psychologist.
pharmacology? Take some substances before you go to bed. Have some really wild dreams and come up with some solutions.
Actually, people tell me you're your own worst client because I try not to take anything. But of course, there's a need, and I think medicines have really revolutionized the way that at the end of the day, they're just chemical compounds as everything else which we are made of. Because people tell you, oh, because this is natural, it's safer. It's not. There are natural herbs which can kill you as well. So.
Yes.
Leonie's nodding there when we're talking about problem solving and women, and obviously that's kind of your field,
yeah.
isn't it?
Exactly.
So you're nodding away going, yes, I'm agreeing with that.
Because I can explain that. I won't, of course, because it'll take me a whole hour. But that is actually one of the models of the creative process, where you try to come up with a solution. You try and you try and you try and you don't manage, and you say, okay, let's put it aside, let's sleep on it, let's go for a swim, go for a walk. And then you get the aha moment, the eureka moment, and it all comes back to you. So what happens over there is that we think that we're not thinking about it, but it's actually still in our non-conscious being worked upon. And then when the connection is made, it comes back up to the conscious level, and that's the aha moment that we have.
That's really
So
cool
that is
to
one
hear an
model of the
explanation.
creative process. But earlier I was also saying that we have tools and techniques that we can actually use to bypass the non-conscious element, the sitting around waiting for the idea to just come about. So now you can actually, kickstart or trigger the creative process and use tools and techniques to come up with ideas even when you're stuck.
This is very important, of course, when we come to actually in medicine too, because very often the blockbuster in medicine comes out from a creative idea.
Right.
It's okay, serendipity sometimes, but we do need, but why? I mean, when you consider, for example, how antibiotics were discovered, they were just discovered by purely by chance in St. Mary's Hospital just before the Second World War. And he left what we call some bacteria growing, and he discovered when the fungus, as you leave a piece of bread out, fungus mold grows on it. He discovered that it blocks the growth of the bacteria, and he was wise enough to realize, hey, why is this happening? And he said, oh, there must be something in the fungus which is blocking the growth of the bacteria. That turned out to be penicillin.
Are academic fields to this idea of using a different or a model that they've been using probably for a long time, but it being identified as a specific and different model?
Well, I wouldn't like to generalize to specific fields, but I think there is, there are different individuals who are more or less receptive. So we have worked with, numerous individuals coming from different fields, from science, from business, from education, from philosophy, psychology, who have been very receptive to what we've been doing. And they actually approach us, they would like to have workshops, they want to learn more about how they can, use the creative thinking tools to kickstart whatever they're doing, and how they can use entrepreneurship skills to commercialize perhaps their ideas. Right. But of course you always find those people who are very set in their ways and who think that they have all the answers. Unfortunately, earlier we mentioned being an expert and a non-expert, and I think one of the most important differences between being a true expert and not really being an expert is that the true expert recognizes that they don't know it all, that they do have many years of experience and many years of knowledge, but they still have the open mind and the attitude that they're looking around for newer and better ways of doing things. Whereas somebody who's got the attitude of, I'm here, I'm in the ivory tower, and I have all the answers, then I'm sorry, it's going to be a dead end, and it's going to be quite difficult to move ahead and to move into different areas.
I'm going to come back to a gender issue again, okay? Because I was thinking about something I was doing the other day, and it just, when you mentioned about problem solving, total open question, but do men, you're talking about sort of sleeping on something and the cat biting its own tail, do men and women think about problem solving differently? Are women, because my experience is that women might get to an end solution or propose a solution before they identify that there is actually a problem. Is there a difference the way that men and women think about this in your field?
I don't think it's fair to generalize. I mean, there are excellent creative thinkers who are males, Edward Borno being one of them. Actually, I had done the course a few years ago on creative thinking as well, because I think it's important to get out of your field. And I know many males who really know how to think out of the box as well, and are excellent, even here in Malta. And you know, the way they manage meetings and the way they come out of the rut. Because, okay, we're small, but as Leonie said earlier, what we have is our brains, our heads. And I think this is really important. And then there are women who are set in their ways. Now, whether this is a nature-nurture debate, do you learn it or are you born with it? I think this is something which...
One of the answers to your question as to what defines a better problem solver or not as good a problem solver is an individual's cognitive style, you call it. This is coming from psychology. Some people are more prone to solving problems and approaching situations in a purely logical, rational way. So they need all the data, they need to analyze all the data, they have to, sometimes overanalyze. Other people are what we call more intuitive or more experiential. So they go more on their intuitions, what feels right, their gut feelings and so on. Now, one may tend to believe that either one or the other is better, but in reality, the best is to have a good, healthy combination of both in what we call a versatile cognitive style, in order to be able to pick on the problem-solving technique or style that is more appropriate in the situation at hand. So if the situation calls for analysis and logic, then you need to use that. But if the information isn't there, if the data isn't there, then you do have to go with your gut instincts.
So if people have a propensity for one kind of style to problem solving naturally, and you can learn the other, are people, as two clever women, I'm going to use that open word, I think you're two smart women, are people born smart, or is that something that you can nurture and develop?
As Leonie was saying, there's actually, a few months ago, actually in Malta, there's in the US, there's actually people learn differently. And I think, unfortunately, our education system in Malta is still very much exam-oriented. We get, for example, medical students who are, the best in Malta. They come in with, they have to get top grades and everything to be able to come in. And, they're really good. But then they're so, all students somewhat, I would say, we're so still quite exam-oriented. They learn, the first thing they ask at the first lecture, what is our exam going to be like? Is this for exam? What is our exam going to be like?
Is that different here, do you think, or is that...
And you get it too, even though yours are supposed to be creative.
We get it too, and they get very surprised when they say, well, you don't have an exam for this, because in our courses, in our master's courses, they have...
for me.
That's what I want. Exams.
Quick,
but,
let's go.
The subjects that we teach don't really lend themselves well to examination. So they have lots of hard work, don't get me wrong. It's not like they get their degree for doing nothing at all, but they do lots and lots of assignments, presentations, group work. So rather than going and sitting for a 1 or 2 hour exam, they have to work a lot more.
Well, I've got children who go to school here. They're 9 and 11, and we've been here 9 years. So my children have gone through the early stages of the learning process in Malta. And it seems to me that it's very exam-driven, it's very results-driven, and having worked here as well, people seem to be very hung up on certificates and diplomas and being able to provide them.
I think it's because we're so small, perhaps, and there's still a lot of element of competition. And you see, it's very much when they're young. For example, in Science in the City, we had recently people come and they tell you, oh, I want to be a doctor. Oh, I want to be an engineer. Oh, I want to be an architect. Or okay, they want to be a lawyer. The traditional, they don't realize that there are other things we need to do. And our economy actually we need people with skills, like business.
We need more entrepreneurs, don't
exactly, entrepreneurs. I mean, we're saying we have EU projects, and EU projects are there, like certain EU projects, some national contact point for what's called COST, Cooperation, Science and Technology. And it's a point that in these networks, there have to be SMEs. We cannot only be academics, because the knowledge which we're gaining, if it's a new medicine or a new way of delivering this medicine, or somehow it has to be marketed. So we do need, and I know that even, for example, in certain Faculty of Science courses, now they're actually introducing a model on business and on entrepreneurship, because many of them are going to work in small companies and set up their own small companies.
I was speaking to a fellow mum the other night about their child, and saying, that child doesn't seem to be progressing as well as the school expects and as the parents expect, because it seems quite a rigid way of evaluating somebody through the learning process. Is that fair?
Well, I think it's changing slowly. I know that the ministry is doing a lot to have alternative types of assessments. And even we at university, it's not just by exam, but we do have assignments, we have field work as well. In our end, students have to attend clinical exposure. They have what they call clinical competencies. They actually have to follow patients, and they have to see how they get on with patients. Empathy as well, people skills. That is extremely important in the healthcare profession, how you get on with people. And very often it's something you learn on the job. In my mentorship, I explain to my mentee, when you phone someone, don't just start, say, how are you? And I think people ask, immediately if I meet a group of friends, oh, how are you? How are your kids? Whereas men go straight to just work. For example, even meetings, I see it, okay, perhaps I'm being generalized, but if it's a meeting chaired by a male, I don't know if you see it, Leonie, the meeting drags on forever. They don't get to it. Whereas a woman, because we know we have to do so many things, it's and we get things done and decisions are taken. Meetings that are longer than 2 hours are useless, in my opinion. It's an hour and that's it.
It's so true.
If you have a good agenda and you know what everyone's doing, everyone's going out to deliverables of what they have to do, and there are timelines as well. That's really important. Targets.
So, Leonie, the work you're doing, is that translating into how teaching is being evolved in Malta? From top to bottom?
We are involved in that to some extent. There has been a recent change in the national curriculum framework at primary and secondary level.
That's right, yes.
Into a group of learning areas and what they call cross-curricular themes.
Yes.
And one of the cross-curricular themes is education.
Over my head.
They have actually introduced creativity, innovation and entrepreneurship as one of the cross-curricular themes. So essentially what it means is that these subjects should be infused across the curriculum. Now, some of my colleagues at the Institute have been involved in a project to design the learning outcomes framework for this particular cross-curricular themes, and now there's a train-the-trainer program to then start to train the teachers and so on how they actually do this. We've also published a book on fostering entrepreneurship through education, and it contains over 200 activities and suggestions that teachers at different levels can use with their students to teach entrepreneurship through their own subjects. So rather than creating an extra subjects, that might be met with resistance from parents and for students. Oh no, not the subject.
Well, exactly.
Teaching them how to be more entrepreneurial, developing the entrepreneurial mindset from as young an age as possible through the sneaking in.
Thank you very, very much for joining us, and I obviously wish you, both of you, the very, very, very best in your careers.
Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. So this has been In Demand. Make sure you join us this coming Sunday, where you'll be able to catch up what we're going to talk about now with a glass of wine, and we'll see you then.
Absolutely. If you want to find out about this show or anything that we've discussed or anything that we do on In Demand, go onto our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/InDemand TV Malta.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on Sunday and the following Friday, where we speak to some more fantastic women.
Good night.